Welcome to Value Plays Only, where Ad Nauseam is basically a 5-mana wheel. Today we have John playing Zhulodok, Voidgorger. This is a big mana colorless random number generator. It looks to cast discounted high CMC cards to cascade into a win. It usually wins through a glaring Fleshraker loop. His hand contains a Sojourner's Companion, Memory Jar, the One Ring, Soul Ring, Eldrazi Temple, Mishra's Workshop, and Planar Nexus. Cammy is playing Tasigur, the Golden Fang. This evolution list looks to ladder Tasigur into massive threats. It plays several infinite mana combos with Tasigur and Thassa's Oracle. Her hand contains Beseech the Mirror, Orcish Bowmasters, Force of Negation, Fanatic of Ronus, Elves of Deep Shadow, Dark Ritual, and Misty Rainforest. Dan is playing Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. This is a Rakdos Storm deck pretending to be a stacks deck. It's loaded up with 1 damage ping effects to generate massive card advantage through Ob. It can win with Agatha's Soul Cauldron or Dualcaster Mage. His hand contains Agatha's Soul Cauldron, Flare Duplication, Red Elemental Blast, Dark Ritual, Lotus Petal, Exotic Orchard, and a Shadowblood Ridge. Tyler is playing Marneus Calgar. This Esper value pile is chock-a-block full of token generators that Marneus turns into card advantage. It can win with Thassa's Oracle or Hullbreaker Horror Loops. His hand contains an Impostor Mech, Ophelia Exuberant Shepherd, Mox Diamond, Sink into Stupor, Polluted Delta, Windswept Teeth, and a Scrubland. And with that, let's see some value plays. John starts things off with a Mishra's Workshop as land for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. It resolves and John taps out for a turn 1, the One Ring. It resolves and the table can't believe the power of colorless. John gains protection from everything. He taps the One Ring to draw a card. Happy with maybe the best start his deck can produce, John passes the turn. Cammy plays a Misty Rainforest as land for turn. She pays a life and cracks it, fetching up a Bayou. She casts a Dark Ritual. Cammy adds 3 black mana. She spends 2 on an Arcane Signet. It resolves and she taps it for a Fanatic of Ronus. Finished up with an impressive turn 1 of her own, Cammy passes the turn. Dan plays an Exotic Orchard as land for turn. He casts a Lotus Petal. Dan then casts Dark Ritual. Tyler rethinks his mulligan plans. Dan then taps out for his commander, Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. Another great start in the books, and Dan passes his turn. Tyler plays a Scrubland for turn. He casts a Mox Diamond, discarding Windswept Teeth as it enters. Tyler casts an Impostor Mech, determined to have cool cards in play also. Impostor Mech enters as a copy of Nixilis. Tyler then passes the turn. John untaps and in his upkeep the One Ring triggers. Eyeing the 2 Obs waiting for a ping, he taps his One Ring to draw 2 cards. The trigger then resolves, dealing 2 to him. John casts the Eternity Elevator. Like with every card in his deck, John's opponents have to give this card a read. The Elevator resolves. John plays an Eldrazi Temple as land for turn. He then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She casts an Orcish Bowmaster. It resolves and Cammy pings Dan for 1. Tyler's Ob triggers to get a counter and exile Voice of Victory from the top of his library. Cammy then casts Elves of Deep Shadow. Finished up, Cammy passes her turn. Dan untaps and plays a Scalding Tarn as land for turn. He casts a Lion's Eye Diamond. Dan then goes to combat, swinging Nixilis at John. John takes the damage, and Dan passes his turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays a Polluted Delta as land for turn. He casts a Chrome Mox. It resolves, and he imprints Sink into Stupor. Tyler casts Voice of Victory from exile. In response, John flashes in Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter. Voice of Victory then resolves, and Tyler passes the turn. John untaps and in his upkeep, the One Ring triggers to deal 2 damage to him. In his main phase, John asks Cammy what her plans with Bowmaster are. She says she isn't willing to commit to anything. John suggests that he will draw with the One Ring right now if Cammy will out the Nixilis on Dan's board. His argument is that once Ob gets some counters, it will be out of range for the rest of the game. Cammy agrees, and John activates his One Ring, drawing 3. Bowmaster triggers 3 times, pinging Nixilis for 3, killing it. John then plays a Talon Gates of Madara as land for turn. It enters and triggers, targeting Bowmasters to phase out. John shows Cammy a hand of no cards that draw, but doesn't know what it will cascade into. He then casts his commander, Zhulodok, Voidgorger. Liberator triggers to get a counter. Tyler pays a life and cracks his Polluted Delta, fetching up an Underground Sea. He casts Mana Drain, targeting Zhulodok. John responds by flashing in a Manifold Key. It resolves and he activates it to untap the Eternity Elevator. He taps out to flash in Camille, the Inner Sun, in an attempt to make his spells uncounterable. Liberator triggers to get a counter. Reluctantly, Cammy steps in here, casting Force of Negation, exiling Neoform as an additional cost. She cries for her win that she had to exile, and Camille is countered and exiled. Mana Drain then counters Zhulodok. Blown out, John stations his Eternity Elevator for 3 with Liberator. He then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She takes 1 from Elves of Deep Shadow to make a black. Tyler's Ob triggers to get a counter and exile City of Brass. Cammy then delves her whole graveyard to cast her commander, Tasigur, the Golden Fang. Cammy then passes her turn. Dan untaps and draws. He plays a Shadowblood Ridge as land for turn. Dan then casts Agatha's Soul Cauldron. With no other plays, he passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. At the start of his main phase, he had 6 colorless from Mana Drain. He plays a City of Brass from exile as land for turn. Tyler casts his commander, Marneus Calgar. It resolves and Tyler goes to combat. He swings Voice of Victory at John. Voice triggers to make 2 1/1 warriors tapped and attacking John. Marneus triggers to draw a card. John takes the damage. Tyler then passes his turn. John untaps and in his upkeep the One Ring triggers to deal 3 to him. John plays a Dark Steel Citadel as land for turn. Looking at the 2 mana that Tyler's holding up, for the second turn in a row, John casts Chalice of the Void with X equals 2. Liberator triggers to get a counter. Tyler responds by flashing in Ophelia, Exuberant Shepherd. Chalice then resolves. John makes 9 mana with Key and Elevator and spends 8 to cast his commander, Zhulodok, Voidgorger. Liberator triggers to get a counter. Finally, Zhulodok resolves. John stations the Eternity Elevator with Zhulodok, adding 7 counters. John casts Sojourner's Companion for free. It triggers to cascade twice. Kemi responds by activating Tasigur, milling Verdant Catacombs and Cyclonic Rift. Tyler adds Cyclonic Rift to hand. The first cascade trigger resolves and John finds Expedition Map, casting it. The second cascade trigger resolves and John finds Curse Totem, casting it. The table forgot about Chalice of the Void trigger here, but we'll remember this before it becomes relevant. John taps the One Ring to draw 4 cards. Bowmaster triggers 4 times to ping Zhulodok for 4. John responds with a Knot of this World for free, targeting the Bowmaster ability targeting Zhulodok. It triggers twice to cascade. The first cascade trigger resolves and John finds Voltaic Key. The second cascade trigger resolves and John finds Moonsilver Key, casting it. It's here that Kemi points out the Chalice of the Void. Chalice triggers to counter Moonsilver Key. The table then noticed the Curse Totem should also have had a Chalice trigger, and John puts it in his grave. Knot of this World counters 1 Bowmaster ping. In response to the rest, John activates Voltaic Key, untapping the One Ring. He taps the One Ring to draw 5 cards. Bowmaster triggers 5 more times, with 1 more targeting Zhulodok and 4 on Liberator. Liberator takes 4, and then Zhulodok dies. All out of gas, John passes the turn, discarding down to hand size. Kemi untaps and draws. She plays a Shifting Woodland as land for turn. She taps her Elves of Deep Shadow for 1 black mana, taking 1. Tyler's Ob Nixilis triggers to get a counter and exile Imperial Seal. John comments on how Tyler's actually looking pretty scary right now, as Kemi puts a Beseech the Mirror onto the stack, bargaining it by sacrificing Arcane Signet. Beseech resolves and Kemi exiles and casts Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing Tasigur as an additional cost. In response, Dan pays life and cracks his Scalding Tarn to give Tyler a card. Tyler's Ob triggers to get a counter and exile into the Flood Maw. Sadly, Tyler has no mana as Dan fetches up his Badlands. Eldritch Evolution resolves and Kemi searches up a Hoarding Broodlord to the battlefield. It triggers and exiles a card. Kemi convokes to help cast her mystery card, which is Saw in Half, targeting Broodlord. Broodlord is destroyed and Kemi creates 2 token copies of Broodlord. Both Broodlords trigger to exile 2 cards face down. Kemi convokes her first card, which is Sacrifice, sacrificing a Broodlord token as an additional cost. Kemi adds 8 black mana. She then convokes to help cast her other card, Peer into the Abyss, targeting herself. Peer resolves, and Kemi draws half her library and loses half her life rounded up. Kemi casts a Culling Ritual. The board is blown to bits, and Kemi adds 15 mana in some combination of black and green. She then casts Deathrite Shaman. It resolves, and Kemi casts a Birthing Pod. She pays 2 mana to sacrifice Deathrite Shaman, searching up a Thassa's Oracle to the battlefield. Thassa's Oracle triggers, and in response, Kemi casts Demonic Consultation. She names Shieldred the Apocalypse. Kemi exiles her entire library, not finding it. Thassa's Oracle's trigger then resolves, and with that, Kemi wins the game. Today, we have a 2-for-1 deal. In this game, Dan is playing Tivit, Seller of Secrets. This deck looks to slowly control the game until it can cast Tivit. From there, the deck can win with Thassa's Oracle or Time Sieve. His hand contains Strix Serenade, Enlightened Tutor, Soul Ring, Mox Diamond, Cavern of Souls, Ancient Tomb, and Scalding Tarn. Kemi is playing Kinnan, Bond of Prodigy. This deck looks to make infinite mana and filter it into Kinnan, putting out huge threats along the way. Her hand contains a Wandering Archaic, Gilded Drake, Birds of Paradise, Talismanic Curiosity, Breeding Pool, and Tropical Island. Her London Mulligan is a Sink into Stupor. Tyler's playing Magda, Brazen Outlaw. This is a rare monocolor combo tribal deck. It can piece together instant speed wins with Clock of Omens and any artifact dwarf. His hand contains a Barkform Harvester, Trinisphere, Dwarven Grunt, Liquid Metal Torque, Twin Shot Sniper, Barbarian Ring, and Talon Gates of Madara. John is playing Captain Sisay. This is a Legends combo deck. The deck has a variety of toolbox tutor options from the command zone, as well as an ability to fetch all parts of a Gaia's Cradle or a Shia combo. His hand contains a Marvin Murderous Mimic, Elvish Mystic, Drannith Magistrate, Mox Diamond, Nature's Rhythm, Gemstone Caverns, and Marsh Flats. And with that, let's see some value plays. John has a pregame action and puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Marvin Murderous Mimic. Dan then takes his turn. He plays a Cavern of Souls for turn, naming Rogue as it enters. He casts a Mox Diamond, discarding Scalding Tarn as it enters. He casts a Soul Ring. He then casts Lotus Petal. The table try to pick their jaws up off the ground with how fast this start is. Dan finally decides to pass his turn. Kemi plays a Tropical Island for turn. She casts a Birds of Paradise. Kemi passes. Tyler plays a Barbarian Ring for turn. He takes 1 to cast a Dwarven Grunt. Tyler then passes the turn. John untaps and plays a Savannah for turn. He slams down a Drannith Magistrate. The table cheers as they have contained Tivit, the galactic menace that he is. Dan taps out one of his plentiful mana to cast a Strix Serenade. The whiplash at the table is wild. Sometimes they just have it all. With no other answers, Drannith is countered and John makes a 2-2 bird. With that, John passes. Dan untaps and draws. He plays Ancient Tomb as land for turn. He takes 2 to cast his commander, Tivit, Seller of Secrets. It resolves and the council begins voting. Dan votes to give himself 2 treasures, and the rest of the table also give him treasures. With 2 cards in hand, they think that keeping off more cards may stem the bleeding a bit. Dan then passes the turn. Cammy untaps and draws. She plays a breeding pool for turn, into play untap, paying 2 life. She tells the table that they're saved and shows a Gilded Drake. She's then reminded of the Ward 3 that Tivit has for some reason. Their hopes are dashed yet again. Cammy instead casts her commander, Kinnan, Bond of Prodigy. She taps her bird for 2 mana for a Talisman of Creativity. Cammy then passes the turn. Tyler untaps and draws. He plays Talon Gates of Madara for turn. It triggers to phase out John's bird. Tyler casts his commander, Magda, Brazen Outlaw. It resolves and he goes to combat. Tyler swings Dwarven Grunt at John. Magda triggers to make a treasure. John takes the damage. In his second main phase, Tyler plays a Mox Amber. He then passes the turn. John untaps and plays an Elvish Mystic for turn. He passes. In his end step, Dan cracks a treasure to cast Enlightened Tutor. It resolves and Dan puts Time Sieve on top of his library. Sometimes they really have it all. Dan untaps and draws. He plays an Underground River as land for turn. Dan casts Time Sieve. One by one, the table pass priority, resigning to their fate. Dan activates Time Sieve, sacrificing 5 artifacts to take an extra turn. He goes to combat and swings Tivit at Tyler. Tyler takes 6 and Tivit triggers, making 5 new artifacts. Dan presents a loop of taking an extra turn with Time Sieve, and then making new artifacts for Time Sieve with Tivit. With his infinite turns, he slowly attacks down the table for lethal commander damage with Tivit. With that, Dan wins the game. So what did we learn today? The best colorless start in the history of Magic may just not be good enough to overcome one Bowmaster. If you have any tips for the video, leave them below. Subscribe if you feel like it. Until next time, keep making value plays. That's awesome. I get.
Bro, I can't
Dude, if you mana drain this guy, I'm gonna be so sad. I can't stop you. I'm colorless.
Yeah.
I'll tap it if you'll shoot the bomb.
I would
Are you
ask.
about to win?
No. I'm going to show you my entire hand, Cammy.
He said it doesn't mean anything, Cam.
I can't read.
No, look. You get.
Here's 2 for a mana drain.
I will put a Camille, the Inner Sun. It says spells I control can't be countered on the stack. For some
Okay,
reason.
I will cast Force Negation on Shamil, pitching me a form. What I did for you, I had the game.
Oh shit, okay.
That is, it's too high. It goes 6 and below, you fuckers. Everyone shut up. It's a curse totem.
Ooh, that's rough for
So you
Tasigur.
can't tap
Yeah, can't Tasigur.
or
can't do
activate
anything.
Tasigur.
Yeah. I have ruined your life, I'm sorry.
Or any of my mana dorks.
Right.
Yeah.
Your line has ended.
My line has ended.
I can do nothing, so it's fine.
This is here.
Another key.
This one.
That's weird. That's weird.
Everyone shut up.
It's like the deck works together or something.
Okay.
All my stuff is so
you
shit.
can't
It's
catch
dog shit.
You're right. I can cast it. It is
Could
countered.
you have cast Curse Totem?
A good no.
Thank God!
No, you're right. It is countered. All right.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow.
We've
awesome.
solved that.
Okay.
Okay.
We've solved that. We are not on your team right now, brother.
Yeah.
Yay!
Keeping me.
Trigger.
Dan, how's that feel to watch?
Damn, look at it.
Jesus. Real quick. You're good, but he has Imp
I'm
Seal.
gonna let you finish, but...
He has Imp Seal and he can draw it. I'm just like, I'm scared of him. You go ahead.
Okay,
Lord.
be scared of me, bitch. Beseech the mirror.
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah, you
And
paid attention,
You're
John.
scared.
Open them damn eyes.
What?
and I will...
Can key attack any artifact? John, you've hosed us. You greedy bitch. You greedy bitch.
That's the stupidest sentence you ever said. You guys did this. I'm just saying.
You tapping for key. Did
I
this.
could have put you.
Hey Dan, do you agree that John did this to us by tapping that key when he could have untapped my mana and we'd be in a much better spot?
I think so.
We agree. It's agreed. Unanimous.
Yeah,
Unanimous.
that's right.
You know what's actually really funny?
So I'll use
I win on
3
my
of these.
Dude, I told you.
1 of these.
I can't
True.
understand.
Yeah, I moved to attack, Ophelia attack, Voice of Victory attack, draw a card, draw off my Imp Seal, Thassa's on top. Ophelia bounces your chalice so I can cast Thassa, and then I go. Demonic
Fucked
Thassa.
up.
Yep.
Yay, you win. Dude, can you believe I lost that game?
Yeah.